Let's talk about why I don't complain about being a mother anymore. Not gonna lie, I used to feel really hard done by as a woman, as if I was a member of some oppressed minority, as if the world had it out against me and things weren't fair. I felt like not only I had to go through the physical ordeals of pregnancy and labor and breastfeeding and the sleepless nights and the attachment that the kids were always calling me, but also I had societal expectations to look good, to have a job or even a career, to be able to support myself financially and be a strong, independent woman, but also to be a homemaker and bear the brunt of all of the mental load that it takes to run a family. I felt like women have it harder, like women work harder, like women now, yes, we're liberated to do whatever we want in the workplace, but now we have double expectations on ourselves to do well outside the home and inside the home. I felt like as a woman, I could never escape the guilty feeling that I wasn't doing enough or being enough, either as a mother and a wife or in my own personal identity, growth and development, my expression and my career. Now, if you've ever felt any of those feelings, you know that that's no way to go through life. You feel resentful and frustrated and hard done by, and it causes cracks and fractures in your relationship, especially with your significant other. You know, I used to feel really resentful of my husband. Why did he have it so easy? He didn't have to go through pregnancy and birth. He didn't have to feel like he was never enough. He didn't have to be torn in a million directions and bear all this burden of mental load and emotional labor. How unfair is that? But today, ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to announce that I am liberated of these oppressive ideas in my mind. I feel great in my own skin. I feel happy in my role in our family. And that is something that I want for you too. But first, welcome back to hifam. I'm Avital, and my mission here is to help you to build a strong family culture and raise kids, build a family life that reflects your deepest held values and your vision for yourself. If you're thinking, Avital, I'm not even sure what my values and vision are. How do I build a culture? What's all this about? I urge you to check out my membership, The Studio, where we have thousands of members from all over the world. And what we do there is actually learn the skills, the leadership training, the mindset, the practical hacks of time management and rituals and routines that we need as leaders in our family. You know, CEOs build a culture in their business, and their success really depends on the culture between their team and their customers and their message, and everything needs to be on point. But no one really does that for our families. And our families are arguably the most meaningful project of our lives. And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to give you the frameworks, the tools, and the skills that you need to lead it with confidence and conviction. So check out hifam.com/studio and join us next time it opens. Now, with that said, let's go back to that feeling of being hard done by, as if we're being somehow, used, or as if we're being held down by invisible forces in society. I definitely felt like I found myself in this trapped situation where I wasn't, out there fulfilling my career aspirations in the same way and to the same degree and with the same support that my husband was. I felt that I was limited because I had to take a maternity leave or be there for my baby or have sleepless nights. And I felt somehow that this was done to me, that I was suddenly found myself in this situation and that things weren't fair. I got so resentful with all these thoughts running through my mind that even just when my husband would come home after a hard day's work, I felt like he didn't get it. He didn't see me, like all my work and extra effort was invisible. If I'm being honest, just between us, at the end of the day, I sometimes even felt like I needed to inflate and exaggerate how hard my day had been. Like, no, you don't understand the tantrums, the diapers, the spills, the loneliness, the frustration, the irritation. You don't get it. You couldn't do it. I felt like I kept having to emphasize to him how big my job was, how much work it was to maintain a home, to keep a, part-time job that I always kept, to manage the kids and the schedules and all the mental labor. I'm sure you've seen this on the social spheres, the idea that women do all this mental labor, that women hold all sorts of emotional burdens for the family that are invisible, unrecognized, unsalaried, and really unacknowledged by anyone, sometimes including our partners, our closest loved ones, our children for sure, and even by ourselves. Because if I'm being honest, on a deeper level, perhaps the guilt was about feeling unworthy myself, feeling like I didn't value what I was doing, like I wasn't some stellar and incredible, homemaker. My house did not look like Home and Garden magazine, like I wasn't a perfect parent because I yelled and got frustrated and sometimes just wanted to be alone. And like I wasn't really performing that amazingly in my job either. Like, yeah, I was bringing some money, but I still wasn't the main breadwinner or earner. And if those are the types of feelings that you have, like you're failing on all fronts, like you're not worthy, or like your work is unrecognized, unseen, and uncelebrated by society at large, by your partner in particular, and even by yourself, then I want to just commiserate with you for a minute and also to let you know the good news, which is that that's not a way that you have to live. You don't have to stay stuck there. I didn't, and you can too. You can liberate yourself from that mindset. Now, why would you want to? Well, because first of all, it kind of sucks. It sucks to feel like we're living life in the shadows of what we could be, like we're not fulfilling our potential, like we're unworthy or unvaluable, like the work we do, because it's not salaried, it's not valued by others. And like the work we don't do is work that we should be doing. I mean, I can't tell you the number of my students who come to me telling me that they feel guilty for their full-time job because they're not home enough with the kids. And then their counterparts who tell me they feel guilty that they're stay-at-home moms and homemakers because they're not bringing in the bacon. And then the ones in the middle who feel guilty on both accounts because they're failing at being an amazing parent, but also not really excelling at their work. Like they should always be somewhere other than they are. Like they're really not feeling fulfillment and a full potential. Like they're exercising themselves and reaching for their ambitions and really actualizing on any of the fronts. Not in their relationships, not in their work, not in their homemaking, not in their parenting. And that is no way to live. So that's the first reason that I want to break this down for you. The second reason is that these ideas worm their way into our brains, but that's it. They're just ideas. And ideas can be questioned and examined and tested. Is this a good idea? Does it help my life? Does it make my life better? And one of the best tests for these ideas is what it does to our relationships, particularly what it was doing to my marriage. I mean, the feeling that I was hard done by, that I was somehow being held down, that I was somehow being forced into this position, and that my work was unrecognized and I was not being valued, wormed its way into my conversations with my husband and how I saw him. I felt like I was in competition with him, like I always needed to prove that what I was doing was also important, that somehow I dismissed the things that he was doing because I needed to uplift myself. It made us in a tit-for-tat, competitive environment, which honestly fosters a lot of unnecessary conflict and builds feelings of resentment. Now, I can't tell you in my work with thousands of couples over the years how many times I've seen this dynamic act itself out. And the end game, like if you follow that logic all the way to the end, it's always bad. It's always contempt and resentment and separation and really a disgusted, repelled energy towards our partners. Like you never saw me, you never got me, you never appreciated me. And that's not the path any of us want to go down. Now, thankfully, we can catch it. So here are the mindsets that I caught and that I reframed and that I shifted to completely change the way I saw myself and my role. I hope they're helpful for you too. Let me know if you relate. Number one, I actually have choices. Sometimes it feels like we don't have choices, like there are these societal pressures that things just happen to us, that we are somehow passive and lack agency or authority or authorship over our lives. But the truth is that so often when I told myself that I didn't have a choice, that this just has to be this way, I was wrong. I did have a choice and I was making choices. And I had to suddenly realize that I live in a free society and what a blessing that is. So many people around the world, women especially, don't have choices. They are often forced into particular situations like staying home with the children or like not developing their careers because they don't have the same freedoms that hopefully you and I have. I at least speak for myself. I live in a free society. I always have. I've lived on 3 continents and every country I've lived in has had absolute equality before the law for women. Now we can go into the details about is there exact equality on societal levels and education in the home, all the subconscious messages that we receive. And that's an interesting conversation, but let's put it to one side. The fact is that I had equality before the law that people have fought for. I mean, I owe my freedoms to many people who gave their lives for it. And I owe my gender-based freedoms to many women who fought for it. I actually can vote, own land, get a job, do all sorts of things that maybe women in the past couldn't do. But we've won that fight, and now I have those freedoms. So it's really odd and bizarre that I'm sitting here whining about it and feeling resentful about it when the fact is that I have choices. In my case, no one forced me to take a part-time work. No one forced me to stay home with my babies. No one forced me to have children at all, or even to get married. And so if that's the case, I was actually a consenting adult, an aware individual with accountability and responsibility for my actions and choices, then who am I blaming for this? Who's this society? Who's them? What's the patriarchy? What are these forces that I'm so concerned with and that I'm constantly externalizing locus of control onto them as if they have some kind of special, magical, secret power over me? That's not a very empowering way to live. And as someone who really believes in my agency, that's not a good mindset to adopt. I mean, sure, could any of us weave a narrative of the ways that we've been subconsciously influenced and affected? What our dad said, what our mom said, what our teacher said, what our husband said, the various pressures and influences that we've been under? We could, but that's kind of a long-winded and very amorphous, vague, and unhelpful rabbit hole that I wanted to get out of. I wanted to, in fact, see my life as a series of choices that I've made. And I know it's easy to go to great lengths to show how we actually didn't really have a choice. Like in my case, for example, I got married very, very young. And it would be easy for me to keep telling myself, well, you were too young to make that decision. You were too young to understand the consequences for the future. But that just keeps me stuck, small, and resentful. The fact is that I did have a choice and I did make the choice. But beyond that, say I didn't. Say, someone maybe gets pregnant by accident and it wasn't a choice that they made. We still can have the frame of mind and the mindset now to own that reality, to be like, yep, this is the lot I was given. This is the path I'm on. This is the sequence of events that led me to this moment. And I'm not going to keep looking back and thinking how unfair or ill-equipped or ill-advised it was. Looking back and thinking, I must have made a mistake. I was too young. I shouldn't have had so many kids. I should have done my degree first. I shouldn't have got married. Whatever it is, any regrets that you are kind of ruminating over in your mind, in some ways they become just this wasted time, this wasted energy about paths not taken, about alternative choices we could have made. But call it God or the universe or destiny or happenstance or chance or coincidence or whatever you want to call it, you are where you are. And I had to say that to myself, right? In my case, I actually feel like I did make consenting, aware choices. And so what on earth am I complaining about? And who on earth am I pointing a finger at? My husband? I mean, he didn't chain me to the kitchen sink and tell me I had to be pregnant and barefoot. This was my choice to make these decisions to get married and build a family. And then I have choices within that. I could choose to go out and pursue my career and leave my kids in childcare all day. And this leads me to the second point, which is to own the choices, to actually recognize them. The first is to understand that we have choices, but the second is to own them and take accountability for them. It's actually not easy to do that first step, to even just realize that things are a choice, because you think, well, that's just what you do. You just get married and have kids, for example. Or, well, you can't just put a baby in daycare. You've got to stay home with the kids. We all have these preconceived judgments about what one does, what has to happen. And we don't actually break it down and say, well, I actually made that choice, or I actually do believe that, or I actually could do it differently, but chose to do it this way. It was a choice. I am in a free society. And like I said, not everyone is. Some people have a gun to their head, quite literally, right? There are millions of people today held in slavery, held in conditions that don't offer them freedoms. And so those of us who have the freedoms need to be grateful for them, recognize them, but also understand what choice is. With freedom comes responsibility, especially to accountability. And this is the second point, which is that then we need to own the choices and understand that every choice I make has an upside and a downside. I mean, some people say to me things like, but I don't really have a choice. One of us has to be home with the kids and it's going to be me. I'm the primary parent. And to this, I'll give you a really extreme, but maybe it's a helpful, metaphor or analogy to explain what I mean. The truth is that even in that regard, you do have a choice. You might just not like the other choices, but you do actually have a choice. I mean, sadly, the reality is that some people do abandon their kids, for example. I mean, you could take your baby down to the fire station and put them up for adoption. People do actually do these things. And so it is a choice you're making to be an active, involved, and present parent. You are making the choice to make sacrifices in your career in order to be home with your child, if that's the choice you're making. Maybe you're making the opposite choice. You're saying, no, I'm going to let, hired help or the grandparents or my husband be the primary parent and raise my kids because my choice is to, make a living and support my family and be outside of the house most of the hours of the day. I'm not here in this video to weigh up the pros and cons of being a homemaker versus full-time work versus part-time work. That's not what I'm doing here. What I am doing is saying that we, as free people in a free society, actually have these choices, and each one of them has upsides and downsides. And the way that we get out of feeling like a victim is that we start to own the choices that we've made and understand that we are willing to live with the consequences of those choices, the upsides and the downsides. So I had to say to myself, listen, Avital, no one's holding you back and forcing you to be home. No one forced you to have a baby. No one forced you to breastfeed. You didn't have to do that. You could have bottle fed. You could have hired a night nurse. You could have, decided that you're not doing that. Those were choices you had. And you decided to breastfeed. So with breastfeeding comes a certain level of commitment and proximity and closeness. And you decided to breastfeed for 1 or 2 or 3 years or whatever you're doing. Or you made the opposite choice. Either way, there are consequences to those actions and you're making those choices. And that leads me to the next step, which is to compare and contrast roles. I mean, at some point, I had to ask myself, wait, would I want to switch with my husband? I had to ask myself this honestly. And I think you should ask yourself too, would you actually want to switch roles with someone else? Would you rather hand this off to a nanny? Would you rather your husband stays home and you go outside the home? Would you rather you and your partner completely renegotiate the terms and say, okay, here's all our resources, here's our time, here's our manpower, here's our money. Now, how are we dividing this up? If you're unhappy with the role that you're in and with the division of labor, that's a conversation anyone could have. We're in a free society and we have choices and we have agency. So we can renegotiate those terms. But what I realized for myself was that I actually wouldn't have it any other way. As stressful and tiring and difficult and draining as my roles that I had taken upon myself and chosen were, I didn't want to switch. I didn't even want to switch theoretical roles. Like even if my husband could have done the pregnancies and the breastfeeding, I wouldn't want to hand it off. That's the truth. Now, that's almost a silly conversation because it's not a possibility anyway. And many women, I think, would say, I would gladly hand it off. And that's fine. But then for the things that are a possibility, that aren't purely theoretical, you really want to ask yourself. One of my students came up to me saying how resentful she feels that he's off building his career, climbing the corporate ladder, in the C-suite, in the meetings, in the conferences, right? Jet setting across the country. And she's home with the kids. Yes, she has a part-time job, but it's from home. She never has anywhere she has to go. She's not going to climb any big ladders. She's never going to make the big bucks. And she feels resentful. And I said, okay, fair enough. So would you want to switch with him? If you could be off jet setting, wearing the power suits and being in all the meetings, and he would be the one doing the soccer runs and the diapers and the pasta, would you switch? Do you want to pull that trigger? Do you want to take all the responsibility for the finances and be the main breadwinner and have all of that and be out of the house, 9, 10, 11 hours a day, working weekends, being away for trips? Would you want to miss all of these moments? Would you want to be off in the meetings, hustling? Or would you prefer your role? Like I'm just giving you a choice, 2 options. You could switch with your husband or you could do what you're doing. Now, in this particular case, it really struck her and she really thought about it for a moment and she said, no, I actually prefer doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't want to miss this. And that's a aha moment that I had as well. As frustrated and resentful as I was of my husband, the truth is I would never have wanted to do what he was doing. I would never have wanted to be outside the home for all those hours, putting in all of that hustle and grind and hard work and missing out on time with the family. The truth is that as draining as it is to take care of toddlers and laundry and homemaking and the juggle and the hustle, I wouldn't have it any other way. And I had to be honest with myself about that, because thinking that I would was actually destroying my marriage, my mindset, and my own happiness. Having understood that I wouldn't want to switch roles, that actually, with all the downsides and difficulties, this is what I'd rather do, I had to come face to face with the least pleasant side of this mindset that I had developed. And that was number 4, I can't keep dismissing his contributions. There's a cognitive fallacy that is called minimizing. And that is when we take positive things and we shrink them down in our minds. Like, oh, that's not such a big deal, or that's not so great, or yeah, but everything else is awful and this isn't such a big impact. And maximizing, where we take negative things and we blow them out of proportion and give them a tremendous emphasis as if they are the most important thing, to the exclusion of all the positive things. So we make good things seem really small and we make bad things seem really big. And that is actually what I was doing between me and my husband. Remember, I was in this very competitive, resentful, tit-for-tat mindset. And so what I would think to myself is, okay, yes, he's out there working and supporting our family financially, but I also work and support the family. And it's really fun for him to be out in all these nice meetings and with all these adults all day. And he doesn't have to change diapers. And when he gets home, I'm still the one doing most of the dishes and most of the laundry and most of the nights. And so what he's doing is really very easy, and what I'm doing is really very hard. What he's doing is really very small and minimized, and what I'm doing is really very big and maximized. I would create ways in my mind that what I'm doing is so much harder, more meaningful, more important, more of a contribution to our family. Like, oh, if he disappeared tomorrow, our family would carry on the same. No one would even notice. I mean, we'd miss him because we love him, but in terms of contributions and holding up the household, it wouldn't make much difference. But if I disappeared tomorrow, everything would fall apart, because really all he's doing is bringing home a paycheck and I'm holding up the entire thing. Now, this mindset is a mindset that I know many women in particular, yes, have. And it's a mindset that is the destruction of your marriage. It is the way to make a man feel disrespected, minimized, uncared for, unappreciated, unacknowledged. And it's the way to cement that feeling that you have of being unseen and underappreciated. If I keep minimizing his contributions and maximizing my own, I'm entrenching and establishing a competitive vibe between us. Like, I win, you lose. But the problem with a win-lose approach in a marriage is that it will always, but only 100% of the time, lead to a lose-lose situation. Like, we both feel unseen and unappreciated. And we're both constantly trying to prove to the other how much we do and scrape together some kind of semblance of recognition and acknowledgement and appreciation, which is something that we all crave. But instead of just getting that in the direct way, which I'm going to share with you at the end of the video exactly how to do that, we use manipulations and we use sob stories and we make ourselves into a victim and we become really unpleasant to be around. I can say for myself that when I was in that mindset, if my husband came home, I had to accentuate my distress. I had to show him just how hard the day was. I was trying in a very immature and honestly unhelpful and kind of counterproductive way to get his attention and his acknowledgement for all the work that I was doing for our family. And to do that, I had to kind of trigger his empathy by saying, look, it's so hard and I have to do so much and you don't understand and you don't know what it's like. And I've done 9 diapers today. How many have you done? I took out the trash twice. I cooked 3 meals. I've cleaned the kitchen 6 times. I've folded 4 piles of laundry. I've sat through 2 tantrums. What have you done? Right? By doing that, I was constantly making him feel defensive, making him feel like he is not seen, like his contributions are not valued. And I was also making myself quite unpleasant. In fact, this type of victim mindset is a repellent to your partner. It makes your partner dislike you, dislike being around you. They still love you, but they don't want to be around you. It's not fun. They're always under attack. You're always feeling so sorry for yourself. None of us enjoy being with someone who always makes themselves out to be a victim, who's always complaining, who's always whining, who always has a problem, who's never just okay, who's never just happy with their lot, who's never just managing themselves. That type of distressed and despairing energy, it really kills desire in a marriage. It kills the chemistry. It kills the romance. It's not fun. It's not a good look. And it makes you moody and crabby. And Honestly, that just creates a vicious cycle that can lead to the downfall of even the best marriages. And so what I had to learn to do was to start to reduce my cognitive fallacy of minimizing and maximizing and start to actually pay attention to all the things my husband was doing for our family. And also to not make all the things I was doing to seem so big and such a martyr. I had to stop being a martyr and stop making him into useless, right? This might be rooted in that feminist mindset that women need men like a fish needs a bicycle. I don't need you. I could do all this without you. I'm a strong, independent woman. But everybody wants to feel needed and everybody wants to feel appreciated. And in minimizing his role, I was also making myself feel really garbage because I made myself feel like, oh, I'm like a single mom. I'm like a solo parent. Everything falls on me. Everything's so difficult for me. Woe is me. Just this week, one of my students said to me, my husband is out working and he supports our family financially, and I do everything else. I take care of the home, I take care of the kids, I take care of the schedules and the emotional labor and the shopping and the organizing and the cleaning. And I just feel like I'm a single mom without the financial worries. And I had to remind her and say to her, but hun, a single mom does have the financial worries. Maybe it's important to recognize his contribution. Maybe taking on the burden of supporting a family is a huge thing. It causes a lot of stress and anxiety. It is not easy to support a family. Those of us who work know this. We know that you should not minimize the energy and the expenditure it takes to really keep a family afloat, to hustle in the workplace, to get up whether you like it or not and go and put in a hard day's work. Those things are not things that we should be minimizing. And for some reason in our mindset, it's like, well, he should be doing everything else as well. Now, you could have an egalitarian marriage. You could be the primary breadwinner and he could be the stay-at-home dad, or whatever it is that you have in your home. That's fine. The mindset has to be that we look for ways to appreciate each other. And when I looked for ways to appreciate my husband and his contributions, I was also more likely to appreciate my own. I was also more likely to feel good about what I was putting into our family. And I started to see our family as a holistic unit and our marriage as a holistic unit where we're each bringing our 100%. We're each playing to our strengths. We're each doing the roles that we can do well in this moment in time, and that we don't have to be in competition, but rather in collaboration. That actually, this is about cooperation. Together, we're building a home. Together, we're raising a family. Together, we're staying afloat financially. Together, we are building our home and raising our family. And whatever it takes to do that, we're doing in cooperation, not in competition. When I stopped minimizing his contributions and I started to equalize and notice and appreciate both his and mine, I felt more comfortable with my role. Like, he's doing his role, I'm doing my role, and that's beautiful. And this goes for whatever roles you've taken on, whether you're working outside the home or within the home. Just creating an air of appreciation and acknowledgement and accepting your differences goes a long way, which brings me to the next point, which was accepting and even celebrating the differences between the sexes. At least in my marriage, there was a pretty big difference between the sexes, between the man and the woman in the couple. And I want to say that I know that there's a trend in the world to really flatten the differences between the sexes. And of course, there are same-sex marriages. There are marriages where you adopt or you have surrogacy, and therefore the differences are not biological in terms of how you bring kids into the world. But at least for me, becoming a mother through pregnancy, giving birth, and breastfeeding was something that highlighted and accentuated the cataclysmic differences between me and my husband. They're so palpable and obvious and biological and clear that I couldn't keep harping on about sameness and fairness and equality. Like, we're different, it's different, our roles are different. And rather than fighting against that, I actually learned to really appreciate it and to acknowledge it and to celebrate it. Like, for example, I know that I had these thoughts in my mind, like, it's not fair that I have to breastfeed. Why doesn't he breastfeed? I wish he could just take it from me sometimes. And then I had to go through all the steps I've mentioned here and realize, well, I'm making a choice. I could bottle feed, but I'm choosing to breastfeed. And also, I actually wouldn't want to switch. As hard and draining and taxing as it is, I'm happy that I get this role and this experience. And I'm kind of sorry for him that he doesn't. It's magical and precious and beautiful. And I'm really, grateful to have this opportunity. It also taps into my gratitude and my perspective, knowing that many people would love to have this opportunity. Many women struggle with infertility or aren't able to breastfeed. And maybe I should switch around and reframe and appreciate what I've been given and the opportunity that I have. And this is a much better mindset for me in my role as a woman and as a mother, appreciating the things that I've been given, the opportunities I have, the strengths that I have, the contributions that I make to my family, but also alongside that, appreciating my husband and his differences. It's actually really cool that his body doesn't change with the pregnancies, that he doesn't, have those same kind of intuitions or chemical reactions that I do, that we can balance each other out and complete each other. And there's such a beauty and a specialness to that I'm not sure why I was fighting against it and being so resentful of it rather than enjoying, appreciating, and celebrating it. In fact, all that really helped me to kind of reclaim my feminine energy, which is something I think so many of us women and mothers lose. Even in our journey of motherhood, we become very goal-oriented and like a taskmaster. And we become very much in this do energy. Got to prove this, got to finish the to-do list, right? And I think that all of this kind of reshifting and reframing of my role as a woman, as a mother, as a wife has helped me to soften and enjoy being those things and reclaim the playfulness, the sensuality, the beauty of feminine energy, right? The feminine energy that's more receptive, that's more go with the flow, that's less critical, more accepting, that is really light and smiley and warm. And those are things that I wasn't enjoying when I was stuck in the resentful, victimized mindset, hating my role, right? When I was in that mindset, I was moody and crabby and aggressive and manipulative and always feeling sorry for myself and always feeling hard done by and always picking fights with my husband. When I was able to completely shift out of that mindset through all of the steps that I've just outlined here, it was a huge weight off my shoulders. Like, it's a much better way to live. It's much more enjoyable to be comfortable in your own skin, to be happy with the lot that you've been given, to just play the cards that you were dealt, to accept the differences between you and others in the world, and to look for harmony and completion rather than competition. That's a more pleasant way to live, and it brings out a side of myself that I like much more. I'm going to guess that the same is true for most of us. And now I want to share with you that bonus tip that I promised you. The real reason I was so resentful and that I kind of hated my role and I kept complaining about it and being like a victim to my husband was because I felt underappreciated. I think the real reason at the root of why I was kind of fighting against my role, talking about unfairness, feeling like an oppressed minority, feeling like I didn't have choices, feeling trapped, or feeling somehow hard done by the patriarchy or society or whatever other, buzzwords were out there, was because at the end of the day, I didn't really feel appreciated. I didn't really feel like anyone saw me and thought, wow, you're doing a great job. This isn't easy and you've got it. Well done, you. And what I realized was that instead of going roundabout ways, instead of increasing my sob story, whining, and complaining, instead of telling my husband how hard I've got it, instead of pointing out to him that he could never do what I do, all I needed to do is say, babe, I need you to tell me that I'm an amazing mother, that you appreciate all the work I'm doing around the house, that you love the cooking that I'm doing or the cleaning that I'm doing, or that you really respect that I managed to hold down my job while I'm doing these things. I just need to hear that from you sometimes. And the trick to being able to get that type of feedback from your partner that most of us crave is to be able to offer it as well. When you're able to tell your partner, I see you, I value you, I appreciate everything you do for our family, you're able to also ask them to do the same for you. And you're able to completely shift the energy in the home. From an energy of hating the roles that you're in and feeling stuck and underappreciated to feeling really proud and valued and seen and acknowledged and happy, satisfied, fulfilled, and content with the role that you're in. Now, you can always change that role, of course. You can always make different choices. You can always decide to change the path. But if deep down inside, you're actually doing exactly what you want to be doing and you wouldn't switch with anyone for the world, then maybe all you need to do is just tell your partner that you want to be seen. Maybe all you need to do is acknowledge it for yourself and just say, actually, I love what I'm doing. Being a mother or a homemaker or in my part-time work or in my full-time work is something that I own. It's a choice that I make. Sure, it has hard days and downsides, but overall, this is where I want to be and I wouldn't trade with anyone. Ultimately, I learned about myself that what I really wanted was to be recognized. I wanted my partner to tell me I'm a great mom and that I'm a beautiful woman and that I'm creating a wonderful home for our kids. And once he could say those things, because I just asked him directly to say them and didn't expect him to read my mind and didn't apply all these manipulations on him, once he said those things, I suddenly felt really liberated and happy in the role that I was in. And that's a much better way to live. I think that as parents, as mothers in particular, we all deserve to feel confidence, clarity, conviction. I know what I'm doing a good enough job, or even a good job, and I'm building a family culture that I'm proud of. I'm building a project that's meaningful. My family, your family, is the most meaningful project of your life. And I want you to feel that you're doing it pretty darn well. Sure, there's always room for improvement. Sure, there's always apologies that we have to make. But generally, that you're on the right path, that you feel that confidence, and that you know how to establish the household, the physical space, the schedule, the rules, the values, the routines, the rituals, the memories, right? To create truly meaningful memories for your children, to offer them truly clear values to live by, the guidance and the type of closeness and bonds and strong family culture that you want, that togetherness that we all seek when we start out family. And if you want help with all of that, then make sure to go to hifam.com/studio. Get on the wait list and join us next time the doors open, because in it, I will give you all the tools you need. You will take on project by project, whether it's getting organized with your meal plan or going through a full glow up and feeling amazing as a mother, or making sure that you have meaningful screen-free family meals where there's conversation and debate. Whatever it is, we've got it covered in the studio, because that is the place, and frankly, the only place to go to learn how to be a leader and build a family culture that you love. So make sure to check it out now. Meanwhile, keep living that hifam life, and I'll see you in the next video.